or your wife, one of the two, right?
You got speed.
All right, sir, could you tell me when you first went in the cotton mill, how old you were, where your family came from, and how you happened to get in the cotton mill?
Well, I was born, you want me to tell when I was born and raised up on Sullivan Avenue, 1913, January 13th, 1913. And I went to school at Perkins School, and I went to work 1928 in the Cherokee Spinning Company at 15 and a half years old. Told a story about my age for a 16-year-old permit. Raced to 5 and a half out, made a 6, and wadded the paper up, and he the boss give me a job, 10 hours a day for 18 cents an hour. When my father come home on the shop train that night, he worked for Southern Railroad, he taken me to the garage and whipped me for 15 minutes. The office whipping I ever got in my life. And he hasn't told me from that day to yes what he whipped me for, but it was for quitting school. I knowed what he didn't have to tell me. So he didn't have to, when he whipped you, he didn't have to tell you nothing, that he's sorry or what he done it for. But if he promised you a whipping, for 2 days later, you'd get it.
Why did you quit school and go to work?
Well, I'd failed in school, didn't want to study, and I wanted to make some money. And I'd get out and work for practically nothing, and back then, money was hard to come by. My daddy made enough to keep 12 mouths to feed and everything. He didn't have no money to give like you do this damn time. But anyway, I wanted to get me a job. I thought if I got one job, I'd have a job the rest of my life, which I did have, till I retired. But I went to work for 10 hours a day, 55 hours a week for $9.90. I gave my mother $2.50 of that, my father $2.50, and I had $4.90. John D. Rockefeller didn't have nothing on me. I had more fun than anybody with $4.90. Now I worked for that for years and years till NRA from 1928 to 33 when the NRA went in for 30 cents an hour. That was the way. And when I got married in 1938, I was still making 30 cents an hour. I had left crime.
No, we'll stop. Tell us how it felt when the NRA came in.
Well, it felt a lot.
No, when the NRA came in.
It felt a lot better because you made.
No, sorry. You want to put my question in your answer. When the NRA came in.
Well, when the NRA come in, I was making 18 cents an hour. Well, they raised it up and put on piecework. Then, and the hourly workers made 30 cents an hour, and the piece workers, if they got their production, they made more than that. I got to where I can make $14 and $15 a week on by piecework, as long as they had the material to put in the looms to operate. But if I had a loom standing, I didn't get nothing.
What about short time?
Well, you mean the short time working? Well, they run 5 days a week at Cherokee till in the summer they would go down, and you get 3 and 4 days a week, sometimes 2 days. And then when the Depression hit, you didn't have nothing. You was lucky to have if you got 1 day a week, and then we formed the union there several times during that, but they would let the higher officials come in at the meeting and talk the ones in to go back to work, that they'd take care of that later on, but they never did. Just like in 1934 when we went on the nationwide textile strike. All right, we was on nationwide textile strike from Labor Day of 1934, and Roosevelt promised that everybody the strike got so bad and so violent and everything, and people getting killed and things of that sort. And so he had come out that he would settle that strike if everybody go back to work on their job, and he would settle that January the 1st, 1935. And from that day to this, 1991, today's about the 12th, I think, of 91, and he hasn't settled that strike yet.
Okay, now we want to go back and talk about the strike in 1934. First, tell me, why did they go out on strike here? And remember, and put my question in your answer. And why did they go on the strike on Labor Day in 1934?
That was nationwide called a strike. I mean, the textile union nationwide, the union of the textile called that strike for everybody to strike in the textile. And we had more scabs and anything else that kept them halfway operating and went against us and everything is what caused so much trouble. And
why did they strike here?
They strike to cooperate with the rest of them, to feel like if they were getting what the rest of them, the union, one was unionized, that we wasn't union, it didn't belong to the union. And
okay, let's start with saying, well, I was working in Cherokee Mills, we formed a union there, or we didn't, whatever the story is, and then when the national union called a strike, we went out. Tell us about that.
Well, when they called it the nationwide strike in 1934 on September the 5th. Well, I was raised on Union meat and bread. My daddy was a Southern Railroad union man, and they were strong. They never did lose anything. They won when they struck, they won. And so that's the very reason that I didn't go back to Cherokee Spinning Company. I left there and I never was back in the door anymore.
Why?
On account I just didn't want the way they settled that strike, and it never was, and I wanted to move on other places and felt like I couldn't work with the people that I was raised up and associated with, was in the community and everything, that went out and scabbed against me.
Did you get blacklisted?
I got blacklisted. You can mark that down twice. They blacklisted my brother and myself. They refused. They said that it would never work. They said that, but we didn't ask for it. But we did go back when Y. Vanar was superintendent, and he was a German. He was a nice feller, and we went out and asked him for a recommendation and talked to him a while and told him that we could get jobs elsewhere, that we'd have to have a recommendation with his signature on it, the last place. And he said, well, I'll give you a recommendation. He wrote out one that we was on fancy material, all kinds of fancy material. We were good production weavers at that time. And all we had to do was just show that in every place we went. And I did have that, but I don't know what it's got misplaced. But we never did have no trouble getting a job nowhere.
Let's go back on that, see if I sure forget. You struck, you got blacklisted. I want you to say, we struck, me and my brother, and we got blacklisted, but our superintendent, our boss, was willing to give us a recommendation so we could get a job somewhere else. Could you say all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want me to go back to
yes, that's right.
the strike now?
Yeah.
And start where we went out, we were blackballed, my brother and myself were blackballed from this company. And people, they come out, everywhere they say you'd have to have a recommendation from your last employee before they could hire you. And we got a job in Cramerton, North Carolina, and left the day on Christmas Eve of that year and went to work the day after Christmas. But they give us wife Anor give us a recommendation, nice and everything, and he didn't have anything against us as far as our work. But for striking, we was blackballed. They refused to work because my daddy was a union man, and the other people went back and got their jobs. They didn't, because they wasn't in the union family. And they thought we'd have, which I guess we would if we went back to work there, we'd help try the union again.
Now, tell us about that strike. You were on the picket line. Tell us how it ran.
Well, we tried to run it in a nice way.
We tried to run the strike.
We tried to run the strike in a nice way with the people and asked them not to go in and take our jobs. And they'd get violent with us, and when they did, we'd get violent back. And we were connected with Alcoa Aluminum Company in Alcoa, and they were on a strike over there. And we'd visit one another. They'd come over here, and we'd go over there, and we'd get information from them, and they'd come over and showed us how the strike ought to be, the strikers going in. And the restaurant up, it fed the people on 2 carts filled with sandwiches and Cokes and first one things and another. They would go right down by us and make fun of us. The people owned this restaurant. And they said, we go in here and feed, said they eat like pigs, and said they want to get back in here to eat like pigs. And that's what they'd say to it. So Alcoa Aluminum people, we got together and they come over to show us how to operate. And they come over one day and they come down the hill with their 2 carts loaded with all that stuff. And it turned about a dozen flips down that hill they never did arrest anybody because they don't know who was involved in it.
Well, now, I think that's not quite clear. I want you to tell it again. See, the company was feeding people who were feeding the scabs inside the mill. Is that right?
No, the company didn't have nothing to do with this restaurant.
I see.
This was owned and operated by local people. But they were against, because it was hurting their business and things of that, They were trying to protect their business and things, and we was trying to get them to keep the people from going in there and taking our jobs. And the more people come out of Sevierville and everywhere, Andrew Whaley was born and raised in Sevier County. And you go out there and tell them you're from Sevier County and you get a hold of Andrew Whaley, you go to work. He put everybody in and moved the mill in 1954.
All right, sir.
Well, when they formed the picket line in front of the mills, they would get together, and they was, I'd say about 60% of us was on strike, and about 40% went back in over a period of time, but there wasn't too many of them to start with. And they go back a few each day, and get scared they're going to lose their job and this and that and the other. And we told them if we got the union in everything, the union would protect our jobs, and which they promised to protect the jobs if they won. But they went on. We would get together. They would be 25 to 40 people in each group. And they had, in front of the mill, there'd be, I guess 50 or 75 people there. And at the back of the mill where they went in, they'd be, I'd say, between 25 to 40 people. It wasn't a very big gate at the back. That was a parking lot.
Would they sing? Would they carry signs? What did they do?
They carried signs and talked to people and things of that sort. They didn't get violent with anybody or call anybody names or anything of that sort. We tried to talk to them in a nice way because we know that they didn't settle the strike. A lot of us would never get to work there. We knew that to start with.
Now, tell us about why the strike was called off and how it was called off and what Roosevelt did.
Well, it got so violent. It didn't get too violent here in Knoxville, but in North Carolina, especially at Gastonia, North Carolina, they killed people over there.
No, sorry. It was Honey Pass, South Carolina. Let's start over.
Do what?
It was Honey Pass, South Carolina.
Well,
and one place in North Carolina.
Yeah, Honey Pass, South Carolina.
Yeah.
I know this.
Okay,
like.
let's start again. Okay.
Well,
Just a moment.
It's fine now. Nope.
Just one.
Okay.
All right. Just why did the strike end?
why the strike ended? Well, it got so violent and everything that the officials in Washington seen it was getting so violent and everything, and they got together and had a meeting, and Roosevelt come out. In other words, it had to go to him, and he come out and made the statement on TV then.
No, sorry. Let's start again, because there wasn't any TV then.
No, wait a minute. He come out on the radio.
Okay, let's start again.
There wasn't no TV.
Sorry, let's start again.
I'm sorry. I've
That's
been
all right.
used to it. I didn't even have one myself. But anyway,
Why did they call the strike off?
they got together in Washington and talked it over about so much violence. And it was getting worse and worse, especially in South Carolina. There was Dunny and Judson Mill was the biggest mills in South Carolina. And you take in North Carolina, they were just about as bad with all the big companies there. And the little companies and the little mills didn't have much of a change. And that's why that J.P. Steel Burlington was the largest textile company in the world now.
Wait a
minute, I'm getting off a little track.
Okay, let's start again.
All right.
You just give us the bare facts of this, that the Union people in Washington was worked right from the beginning.
After he made that statement.
No, sorry, we have to start way back.
Oh, you want to go back to where the violence and the strike?
Yeah, just say that.
They called a strike. The reason they called a strike off, it got so violent and everything of that sort, and the people in Washington, and Roosevelt come out on the radio and made the statement, all the textile people, it was in the world, to go back to work. That he would settle that January the 1st, but everybody is to get their job back. Well, they didn't carry that out. And he didn't stick to his word, settle it January the 1st, 1935. Everybody waited till January the 1st, 1935, and he did not settle it. And the ones was blackballed in there, got to moving around different places for different work. And brother and myself, we traveled a lot, different mills and things, and worked several. And we finally settled down in Cramerton, North Carolina, and I spent 41 years there. And I retired in '76, and I moved back to Knoxville, where I originated with Cherokee Spinning Company. That's home, but I'm here at home, and they in Sevierville.
Now, why did you have to leave Knoxville?
Well, you couldn't get a job. I went to work at, now let me explain that. I went to work at Gray Knox Marble Company, right up here on Southern Avenue. Millen left $10 million to put $10 million worth of Tennessee marble in this art gallery building in Washington. Gray Knox Marble Company got $3.33 million. Candor got $3.33 million. And Appalachian Mill got the other $3.33 million. And I went to work at Gray Knox Marble Company up there for 30 cents an hour. And I got married in 1938. I was making 30 cents an hour. And my brother was back in Cramerton, North Carolina working. And he got me a job over there as a weaver. And we left Knoxville in April of 1938. 1938, and went to work over there, and I stayed 41 years over there.
Now, we know that a lot of people got blackballed here.
Yeah.
and they went all over the country. Could you talk about those people who got blackballed and where they went and where you've seen them?
Well, now, some that got blackballed went to North Carolina, some from South Carolina, and Alabama. The Maples went back to Alabama. I remember them very well. And the Hicks and Ernest Lane went back into North Carolina. And Florida Henderson from Greenville, South Carolina, he went several different places, and he went to work at Kannapolis Mill in North Carolina, and we got him a job at Cramerton. And also Ed Clayton was at the Concord Mill. We got him a job there. They just had, we got each other jobs, and Brother Hicks, Ernest Lane, went to Chicago, went to Chicago Heights at the Forster Textile Company, right off of Otto Boulevard.
Now, when you were getting these people jobs and looking after each other, did you ever think about forming the union again? Now, put my question in your answer.
Yeah, they tried to form a union at the Kramers over there, and see.
Just say afterwards we tried to find a union.
Afterwards, the mill was over there. Now they had the Mayflower Mill, and the old mill they called it. Well, at the old mill is where
Just a minute, sorry. What I'm trying to
well,
just after we left here.
After we left Knoxville and roamed the country a while, and we get to places, and we settled down, and we was going to try to form a union, get it back, and the people at the old mill wasn't connected with the Mayflower. That's where the looms and all that, and the yarn mill is at the Mayflower. I mean, at the old mill down. Anyway, they wanted to form it, and we had a real smart man from the University of Tennessee, graduated, and he was our district manager for Burlington. And he was smarter than people thought he was. And the people wasn't up to form that union. They was going to form it at the old mill. And they tried to get the Mayflower mill to come in together, and he put them separate mills, and they couldn't vote enough to each mill. But they was going to put them together and vote together and get enough, the majority. And he was smart enough to divide those two mills, and they had to take their election at one mill and election another, and they didn't get enough votes to bring the union in. And it wasn't too many years after that we decided that we didn't have much of a change. We just work on, and Burlington, it's hard to fight Burlington, as large a company as they are.
Did you ever work in a union cotton mill after you left Knoxville?
Nope.
Just say I never.
No, I never did.
I'm sorry. Just say after I left Knoxville.
After I left Knoxville, none of the mills would ever organize, because you couldn't get the people in the textile to stick with you. They go with you so far, then they back out and sell out or do something for the officials of the mill. Would talk them in, see they'd own the villages and the houses, and you were in their houses, and they could tell you to get out. And you had to get out or get thrown out. See, that's the way the mills in North Carolina and South Carolina, they had all these mills had their villages. When they give you a job, they provided you a house to live in. And that way, when you left there, you'd get out. And if you'd done anything to get dismissed or quit or anything, or do something, out you go. Well, they had the advantage of us. We couldn't form nothing.
Okay, now I want to go back to Roosevelt again. You're the only textile man I've found, save one, who seemed to realize that Roosevelt really did you dirt. So I want to make sure that we have that. How did you feel about Roosevelt when he first came in, and then why you trusted him, and then how you felt when he called it off?
Well, when Roosevelt run, things was in such a mess in this country. And he went in with the promise of the people that he'd help. All right, he went in, he put all these places on WPA and all such as that, and made different jobs of all kinds of things for people to make a halfway living, something to eat, till he could get better. And he done good, and he was reelected in the next time, but he come out with that, and he was afraid to go against the union. I mean, favor the union, because he's always, our government's always been against the union.
Okay, let's start out that. Roosevelt did a lot of good. He started the Blue Eagle and so forth, but he was afraid. Okay.
He was.
Let's start Roosevelt.
With Roosevelt in, he done real good till it come to this nationwide textile strike, and he was too much involved, and he knowed what would happen to him when he went with the union. But he promised for everybody to go back to work, and he would settle this strike and get people back on his side to get reelected and everything, because election was coming up. And he didn't live up to his word, and everybody was against, but didn't have enough to, and he stayed in because of the good work he done otherwise, that he helped all the poor people that didn't have nothing to eat and on starvation and things like that. That they put him back in there over the years.
This is so important. I'm going to just go over it again. You see, so many people don't, I think because Roosevelt had brought in the Blue Eagle and reduced the hours from 55 to 40 and increased the wages from, say, $8, $9 to a minimum of $12, when he said that they had a right to form a union, they believed him. And then when the strike came and they got, that's what I want you to tell all about that.
Yeah,
right,
well, when Roosevelt went in, he done everything, and he kind of favored the people and helped them, and he knew this nationwide strike was coming up, but he didn't have anything to say against either side. And he did, one of his aides said that they didn't want violence if they could keep it down. But it got in a place where the violence got pretty rough. And then when it come time to make a decision, he made this decision in a way he made this, it wasn't, I'd say, very truthful. It wasn't too much belief in, but he's wanting people to settle it, to get it down. He knows if he'd ever get people all back to work, he could. The rest of them can hunt him a job. That's the way I looked at it. The reason I never did vote no more for him. And he stayed in until he died.
But you were angry with Roosevelt.
Well, in a way, yes, for not sticking to his word.
Just say, yes, I was angry with Roosevelt.
Yes, I was angry with Roosevelt because he didn't stick to his word. I was raised up, my word was my bond. We didn't need nobody to sign a note or anything. Your word was your bond. If you give somebody your word, well, that was your bond. That's the way I was raised up. But over the years, you don't have no bond, and the people that signs for you, they don't believe half of them. I'll just put it that way. Now, that's the way it's got. But back then, you could go and if you wanted a favor out of anybody and you tell them you'd return it at a certain time, it was returned then. That's the way we were raised up and lived that way. And we had good neighborhoods, and neighbors all went to visit one another and get together and have different things. Nowadays, you don't even know your next door neighbor. Now that's a fact. I've been here nearly 16 years, and the only man I know is Mr. Acup. He's a big executive of the Human Resources. The reason I know him because he'll talk to me. The rest of them, they don't even talk to you or tell you who they are or nothing. All in this neighborhood is 16 years, and I've been around, visited a lot of them, and got blessed out with one neighbor. We did one day, walked out to introduce herself to the lady, and she just practically blessed us out.
Well, that's not the way it used to be in the cotton mill.
Back when I was raised up in the cotton mill, let me make this statement about the cotton mill people, was rated the low-class people, the poor-class people, and they looked down on them. Anybody was in a cotton mill, they looked down. They didn't know what textile was. They was cotton mill. Cotton mill trash is the way they put a lot of the big companies and this and that and the other put people down as cotton mill trash. I'll be fair with you. I've heard it, and I went to work in there. My daddy wanted me to be a railroad. 6 of us boys, he wanted us all to go to railroad. None of us never did go. But I have fared very well. The years I've been since 1934, I have fared very well. I raised a nice family. I got a nice home, and I'm retired and enjoy myself for